Welcome to another episode of Chad Sports Talk. You don't know my name's Chad. Take a dive into sports. Welcome to Week 6 recap and eliminatory video for college football. That's right, 6 weeks are now in the books. We got a couple of amazing rivalry games this past weekend and a historical one, to say the least. We'll see some ranked teams going at it and seeing, undefeated teams finally get their first loss and other teams continue to thrive. And all in all, I didn't do too bad in my 12 picks. I actually went 7-5, which is very reasonable, I might say so. And then kind of the extra games got mentioned. I went 4-0, even though I said I would not do the extra games. I still ended up doing it, so I'm a liar. But before I dive into the madness that happened over this past weekend in college football, if you could, go ahead and smash that thumbs up for me, especially the kinds of provide early places you two guys really help out the shout outs. You can also subscribe. Let you guys review my work. I love you all for doing that. Now, maybe to subscribe. It costs you a dime, helps me provide more entertainment value for you. Let's start off with the Shamrock series in Las Vegas between Notre Dame and BYU. It's just not to sit in two private religious institutions battle in Sin City. I want BYU on this one because, Notre Dame hasn't really shown me anything they could really do. They've had glimpses of what they could do if they executed the game plan correctly and their offensive line did what they had to do, protect and create the holes, get the running lanes set up. Because Estime almost had 100 yards rushing because of that. Pine had enough time to throw 3 touchdowns, so they were doing everything they possibly could to mimic that. And their defense actually, stepped up. And the defense for the Irish has been decent, but I didn't think they was going to sustain it. I thought they had a good two-game winning streak, and if they're going to end right there with BYU, Irish said, I don't think so. And beating BYU 28-20 and really just starting to put the pieces together for Marcus Freeman tenure in for the Irish. And maybe the way he's building this team and moving forward, they might start going the right direction, but they have a long list of teams that they have to take on that's going to really test their mental, including Clemson and USC. So we'll see what happens later on here. Then we have to Champaign, Illinois, where the Illini are playing host to Iowa, a team they haven't beaten in since 2015 or something crazy like that. It's been a long time, and I mentioned before, Iowa plays defense. So does the Illini. The Illini's defense is no laughing matter either. Both offenses struggled immensely. They just did enough to set their teams up for field goals. Chase Brown had over almost 150 yards rushing, no touchdowns. Illinois had to go to their backup quarterback. And there was a key play towards the end of the game where Strzokowski was getting tackled when his elbow hit, then fell by his forearm, so he's down by contact. The ball came out, but that got taken back to the house for a fumble 6, overturned. Iowa faithful there were not too happy with it, had to deal with it. Illinois was able to kick a game-winning field goal, and then just intercepted Iowa later on, and that was it. Illinois now moves to 5-1 in the season, beating Iowa 9-6. What a barn burner that was. But in college football, sometimes it's how you win and who you beat to win, and pretty much the mentally you are beforehand. Now, in the most recent AP poll, I think the Illini actually got in at number 25. So congrats to them, finally making it back to the top 25. Let's see how long they stay there, because they still got a date with Michigan later on in a couple weeks. So that should be a fun matchup between those two. Then we'll head down and take on the Deep South's oldest rivalry. And this wasn't a rivalry. This was a whole keg of ass whooping getting opened up on Auburn as Georgia just destroyed them 42-10. I mean, there's nothing else to really go about this. This was just a one-sided affair that was just, it was blowing wide open in the fourth quarter. I mean, that's what really transpired to that. I mean, it was 21-3 heading to the fourth, and then they doubled up the points there. This game, and then Alabama's, which I will discuss a little bit later, put Georgia back in the number one spot in the polls. So it looks like a Alabama-Georgia matchup could be a game changer. Now we'll head out to L.A. with the resurrected USC Trojans, led by Lincoln Riley, and then his protege he brought over from Oklahoma, Caleb Williams, playing host to Washington State. Now, Washington State, I thought, was going to put up more of a fight than actually did, and they did initially. It was only 17-14 at the half, so Washington State still had an opportunity to do that, but the door got slammed shut, and USC ended up rolling 30-14, undefeated, and really make that end of the year matchup against UCLA very interesting. I think their next opponent, next test they got coming up is Utah, but yeah, there's some issues with that one as well, which I'll discuss a little bit later. Then we head down to Baton Rouge, where Brian Kelly would get his first real test of SEC football. Oh, I can't really say first test because Mississippi State was his first test of SEC football, and he handled that one quite well. But in came in 8th-ranked Volunteers that are just buzzing right now. But Daniels had one hell of a game for the LSU. Yeah, for 300 yards passing with a touchdown. But that was the only highlight for LSU the entire game. That was that touchdown came in the first half. But it was all Tennessee. I mean, they pretty much, it was like averaging 10 points a quarter and just touchdown field goal. I mean, makes it difficult to really do anything, and Tennessee's defense just, that bend don't break philosophy, which, like I said, they coughed up 300 yards to Daniels in the air, but they only got 13 points overall. So congrats to the Vols defense. They did what they had to do, shut down a dynamic player in Daniels, limited the damage he's going to do, and they rolled and demolished LSU 40-13. Now we head back to LA, back to the Rose Bowl, and the aforementioned Utah was taking on undefeated UCLA. Now this one I went with Utah because I figured that the Utes was going to be able to stop Chip Kelly because his wins haven't been truly impressive as of yet. And I thought Utah had a decent shot of possibly upending the apple cart basically for the Bruins. I mean, at the halftime it was only 14-10. Utah kept hanging around, and it was like 28-18 heading to the fourth. They were just exchanging touchdowns back and forth, but it was just too much. Thomas, almost 300 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. I mean, that was enough. UCLA outgunned Utah 42-32 to remain undefeated, and really give the Pac-12 some new faces to really kind of look at as possible placeholders for the playoffs. But the 2 new faces they're looking at are also on the way out the door. So, interesting time frames for the Pac-12. We'll see what happens moving forward. They head out to Raleigh, where Florida State came to town. Well, Florida State is trying to rebound after losing to Wake Forest. And this was really, Florida State actually was taking it to NC State for most of the game. That second quarter, Florida State jumped up, scored 17 points unanswered. Up 17-3 at half. I mean, Florida State had this one in the bag, and just NC State, the defense finally clamped down. The offense started to move certain pieces and slowly started to get things back into position and chipped away at the lead. It actually went up 19-17 late in the fourth, Florida State was driving, tried to make a play in the end zone, incomplete. That was the end of the game. NC State holds on, upset bid, and beats the Seminoles 19-17. Now we head out to Lawrence, Kansas, where undefeated Jayhawks. Such. Sorry, I haven't said that name, that phrase in such a long time. It's just weird to say it. We're hosting undefeated TCU. In a battle of undefeateds in the Big 12 matchup, see who's going to sit on top of the league. And I went with Kansas this one. I was like, nope, I was going to ride with Kansas until they prove me wrong. Congratulations. But this is a good old-fashioned slobber knocker. That's basically how you label it down. A good old-fashioned slobber knocker. They're exchanging blows back and forth. TCU just had one more blow than Kansas. Duggan had over 300 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. One of those went to Johnston, who had over 200 yards receiving. As TCU outgunned Kansas 38-31 to move to 5-0, and sitting on top with someone else in the Big 12. We'll get to that someone else in a little bit. Then we head out to Ames, Iowa. Iowa State playing host to K-State. Martinez was the X factor in this game. And I was like, there's no way Iowa State can really... I know Iowa State's going to give them trouble. Because this is Farmageddon. It's probably one of the funniest rivalry names out there, which I don't think they really use much anymore. They used it when they had it in Kansas City for a couple seasons. So it's kind of out there, but it's not really a name they really use much anymore. But I just love the name. I mean, Farmageddon, that just makes complete sense. I mean, that's just because the Royal Universities is also based on their agriculture backgrounds of those two universities as well. But I knew Martinez was going to be X factor in this one, but Iowa State's defense was pretty much limiting his factor. Almost had 250 yards passing, but he only had 77 yards on the ground. So they're corralling his ground attack and just go, okay, heads in the air, and hit him with an 81-yard bomb. That was the only touchdown I got thrown. Everything else was a bend don't break. Iowa State was able to muster along, get a field goal in 3 quarters, take that 9-7 lead into the fourth. Martinez was being corralled pretty much most of the game. Iowa State looked like they possibly could win this, but a game-winning field goal in the fourth, that was enough. K-State escaped Iowa State 10-9. Nice baseball score, but it also could be a good football score because nice low-scoring defensive showdown, which is a second great defensive showdown. And a second one featuring a school from Iowa in the losing effort. Then we head down to Mississippi State, where the Bulldogs playing host to Arkansas. Now, Arkansas is trying to look to right their ship, but I had a feeling they weren't going to do this. I think Rogers was just looking to try to rebound and really step forward and try and be a kind of an X factor in that SEC West matchup, because it looks like it's going to be Alabama and Ole Miss as the top two, and Mississippi State trying to be right there, nipping at the heels, looking for a way to get in to that title game in Atlanta. And it was not a pretty game for Arkansas. Rogers almost had 400 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. But Hornsby tried to do enough. He tried to do on the ground, had 114 yards. His star receiver, Hazelwood, had 113 yards in the air. No touchdowns in either aspect. But at half, it was only 21-10. So Arkansas was still kind of in contention, but then it was just pretty much all Mississippi State all day long. Arkansas didn't really have much of a chance, really. So it was all Bulldogs, 40-17. Then the Red River Shootout, Red River Rivalry, depending on which one you want to use with. I'm used to the old shootout name, but they don't do that anymore. I went with Oklahoma to stop their slide because they're already at lost 2 in a row. Not the case. Quentin Ewers returned as a starting role for Texas, and the power of the mullet. 289 yards in the air, and 4 touchdowns he threw. Robinson did not cough the ball up at all for his running game. Had 30 yards on the ground with 2 touchdowns himself. As the Longhorns soul crushed and stomped the Sooners to the worst defeat ever between these two. So Longhorns shut out Oklahoma 49-0. Oklahoma losses are getting worse. Their program's going the wrong direction right now, and they got to do something quick, fast, in a hurry. But they just got royally stomped by Texas. And the Longhorns are sneaking in there, 2-1 in Big 12 play, sneaking around, possibly could make a name for themselves later on. Then we head out to Maryland, where Purdue came to town, and this is the one I said Purdue was going to come there and win, because Purdue is just one of those feisty teams. There's games where you think, yeah, they should win that one, and they just totally tank it and shoot themselves in the foot like they did in Syracuse. And there's other games they won to Minnesota and took it to the Gophers, which they always seem to do. And I said the same thing in Maryland. Maryland's definitely one of those teams that look like they have some good pieces in place. Not quite there yet. They're a good mid-card team if you're looking, stacking for, fight night, and they're like a good mid-card action. And Purdue came in there, and like I said, there was just too much. There was a 2-point try that didn't fail to complete to tie the game, and Purdue was able to escape Maryland 31-29. Well, those were the 12 games I had. The Irish proved me wrong. Maybe I shouldn't doubt the Irish, or maybe I should. Maybe that helps them win every game. Right with Kansas to keep on winning. That failed. Let's figure Oklahoma stopped their slide. That failed. I thought UCLA got their first loss. That failed. I thought USC get their first loss. That failed. But otherwise, everything else came up roses. Now, I did mention 4 other games to kind of say, okay, these are definitely ones going to be interesting. And I have one extra game in there that should be really surprising for a lot of people. First one's A&M at Alabama. I thought Alabama was going to win this one hands down because A&M's offense was just inept. It's just something about playing Bama that A&M showed up. King had over 250 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. The A&M's defense stepped up. They did what they had to do. They limited the amount of scoring Alabama did, 11-24. It was the fourth quarter. They were driving 4th and goal, so they had to make a play in the end zone. I'm not sure what type of play they tried to use because when King was able to try to throw the ball, there was no one open, so he tried to force it somewhere. Didn't quite get there. In the game, Alabama holds on and beats A&M 24-20. But that game cost them the number 1 position in the polls. They slipped to number 3 in the AP polls. But, that was a heck of a game by both these squads that they were trying to move in the right direction. But, there's definitely some holes in that Alabama armor that could be exploited later on. Out to Stillwater, where Texas Tech came to town to take on the Cowboys. And I thought this would be more of a one-sided affair, but Tech had other ideas, and they just kept fighting along. I mean, it was 24-20 at half in favor of Tech. But it was too much Oklahoma State in the second half as they outscored the Raiders 21-7. Despite Morton's almost 380 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and Thompson's 87 yards on the ground. Tech just couldn't hang on, and Oklahoma State won their shootout 41-31 to remain on top of the Big 12 along with TCU. Then out there in the desert, a showdown between Nix and De Laura. And I already knew that Wildcats was going to be in that one, but they kind of stuck around for a bit. But it was just that second, third quarter, if you take that out, Arizona with a 197. But 42 points Oregon scored in that stretch of games around the halftime, and the Ducks were just all over Arizona, 49-22, and remain undefeated in Pac-12 play, and forced to be reckoned with moving forward. And then down there, Miami had North Carolina and Miami, and this one I picked North Carolina to cruise ahead because Miami was just sputtering along. Van Dyke decided to show up and actually start playing. He almost had 500 yards passing. That is ridiculous. And they only had three touchdowns to show for it. And that is more attuned to North Carolina's defense really kind of limiting the damage that Van Dyke was doing. I mean, he was throwing the muck, and receivers were, like I say, still had 3 touchdowns, but he couldn't. That's all they can muster was 3 touchdowns. And scoring 24 points overall wasn't enough. North Carolina was able to escape Miami 27-24, back to 5-1, 2-0 in ACC play. And the Tar Heel is going to be another problem to worry about for a lot of schools later on. And then the exciting game that I don't think many people saw coming. South Carolina goes up to Lexington, Kentucky to take on the then 13th ranked Wildcats. I didn't give this a second thought. But South Carolina does have a quarterback named Rattler. You may remember that name because he was a starter at one point in time at Oklahoma before he lost his job to Caleb Williams, went the transfer portal, landed in South Carolina, and he had himself one hell of a game. They were doing everything they possibly could. It was just too much South Carolina as they upsetted Kentucky 24-14 and get a huge win in SEC play. So it's a weird setup right there in the SEC East, but I think South Carolina and Kentucky, you might as well realize, okay, we're not going to Atlanta this year. So they'll be jockeying for positions for a good bowl to begin with. And that's the recap of some of the games I was talking about, and that one surprise up there in the Bluegrass State that no one saw coming. Now it's time to bring out the Eliminator. As with the Eliminator, any group of 5 schools that have 2 losses is out, and the pair of 5 schools with 3 losses is out. So let's go ahead and go over this one. As you see, the American only left with 3 schools. Cincinnati, UCF, and Tulane, all with 1 loss. The ACC is down to a handful of programs now. Clemson, Syracuse are still undefeated. North Carolina, Pitt, Florida State, NC State, all hanging around. So we'll start seeing them as they start fighting each other as these programs disappear. So y'all know the MAC doesn't have anything else. The Big Ten lost a couple more this past week. Indiana, Iowa, and Rutgers are all gone. We had the Big 12 Conference A and Independence. Conference A has no members left. The Big 12 ended up losing Oklahoma. Sorry, that losing 3 in a row and getting destroyed by Texas. Yeah, bye-bye. Iowa State, unfortunately, losing to K-State. Texas Tech, then got by Oklahoma State, all got eliminated. No one left for Conference USA. And Notre Dame still hanging around after beating BYU. They both have 2 losses. Liberty almost got that 1. After that Pac-12, Stanford's the only ones really else is gone. Mountain West, you're left with 1 now with San Jose State. And San Jose State beat UNLV, and Air Force lost to Utah State. And we head out to the last 2, the SEC and Sun Belt. Sun Belt, the only 2 left are Coastal and South Alabama. Coastal being undefeated. Now, no, James Madison's in this conference, but since it's their first year in the FBS, they're not eligible, so that's why they're not on this list. And the SEC start seeing schools start getting disappear. Of course, the Auburn getting pounced by. Georgia's gone. A&M losing to Bama, knocked them out. Arkansas losing Mississippi State. Vanderbilt losing, all got eliminated. And there we go. That is the Eliminator. As of right now, my poll is not ready yet. For those that have watched me last year, then we'll come out until the time frame of the college football playoff polls, basically when my poll shows up. What do you thought about this past weekend? A lot of the games. Which game surprised you the most? I was surprised by the outcome in the Cotton Bowl. I thought it'd be a lot closer than that. A lot closer than that. I definitely did not see the stampede that the Longhorns did up there in Dallas, but ooh-wee. But hey, just let me know. Like I said, let me know down below which games you thought were most entertaining, which one shocked you the most. What games you look for next week? It's going to be some key matchups once again. I'll get to that video later on this week with my picks and predictions. See if I can continue a decent run I've been doing. While you're there, make your comment. You can hit that thumbs up once again. You can also share this video with friends and family. It really helps promote this channel out. Once you subscribe, make sure you hit that bell. That'll let you know the next time I post any more content on my channel. And I will see you next time on Chat Sports Talk.